Hey guys, this is John here in Los Angeles with the Alpha Channel update for Sunday, November 10th, 2024. And yesterday, our conflicted card, I forgot to close it out and say what I would do. This is deck number 1. You have like 5 of these. I have 5 of them. I think they have 7 or 8 now. But yesterday, the card was the Jack of Hearts, and you're driving out of state and an EMP goes off. I don't think it says if it's day or night. But all the cars stop along the freeway, and the question is, would you team up with strangers or would you strike out on your own? Now, the being out of state thing is important. I think yesterday I had thrown in that it was a rural section of the interstate, but that's kind of my wishful thinking. I would absolutely strike out on my own. There's no way I would group up in it. I mean, maybe, I don't know. That's not true. It would depend on who I met. It would depend on who I met. It would depend on the people I met and how impressed I was with them, how much I trusted them on site, making snap judgments. Absolutely would be doing that. I probably would be going out on my own. I honestly don't know. It would, it also would depend on if there were people who needed help. If there were people who needed help, I probably could not walk away from them. But it would depend on who they were, and it would depend on how they behaved. So today's card is the 7 of Diamonds, and this one is your child starves to death when you have a neighbor who refused to share food, and you offered all sorts of things in barter, but they refused, and you hold them responsible. Would you plot revenge? This question, I have more problems with how it's phrased than the actual scenario, because how that card is written is everything about the person who's writing it. This card is written with bias in mind. This card is written in such a way as that you could blame your neighbor for you allowing your children to starve to death. You'd have to add conditions to this. Like you're out in the middle of nowhere and you've done tons of favors for them in the past, and that they only have what they have because of the favors you've done for them. If you're in an urban environment, the chances are you could find food for your child somewhere else. So starvation takes a long time. How do you blame this specifically on your neighbor? So I don't know, maybe I've already solved that one for today. So how do you get deeper into that? Today's book is Tarzan, number 6, Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. And in this one, in the last one, he was at, what's-her-name's, Opar, La of Opar. He was at her mercy. And so I believe that's where we wake up this time. He's basically her captive. He's surrounded by her servants, aborigines, for lack of a better term, and he's under her control. They're speaking Mangani, and that's why the word balloons have such a strange shape around them. It's English translated from Mangani. And for Tarzan, it makes sense, but I don't know why La's word balloons have to be like that. Whoa, sorry about that. But look at the art. This is John Buscema and Roy Thomas writing. John Buscema does have a helper, an assistant in this one, and I'm trying to remember who it is. Tony DeZunga is working as an embellisher, probably an inker. John Buscema is doing pencils, and Tony DeZunga is doing inks. I just saw a video, first half of a video about a magazine that came out in the early 2000s called Rough Stuff, where they showed great pencilers' work when it's just very rough, and John Buscema was one of the ones that they had in issue number 3. So I want to get that, although I'm sure there is a lot of it online now. But so anyhow, La of Opar is demanding that Tarzan, that he either be sacrificed or be her mate, and he's like, I'm not going to do it. He refuses to acknowledge her. So she demands that a sacrificial hut be built, and that the next night that they will sacrifice him, or at dawn or whatever, So her men build this hut for her. Tarzan's put in there. He's bound at the wrists and ankles. And she goes in there and threatens to murder him. Tarzan had stolen her sacrificial knife, and Albert Werper, aka Monsieur Foucault, had stolen it from him. And now he is out wandering about the jungle while Tarzan is in Law's clutches. And she goes in there to murder him ostensibly, to threaten him with the knife, and he refuses to acknowledge any kind of superiority of her part over him. And when she, and I gotta wonder how much of this is Marvel method versus written out front. I mean, obviously it's Marvel method. John Buscema just drew it, and Roy Thomas had to write it in later, So Law of Opar has this sacrificial hut built where she spends the night with Tarzan, and he won't sleep with her. He doesn't remember Jane. He's just not interested in her. Roy Thomas has written that Tarzan has amnesia, which I don't think was necessary. I think they could have done all of this without Tarzan having amnesia. The whole story, I don't think that was necessary at all. He could have been telling her, no, I'm with Jane. And she's like, forget Jane. It really wouldn't have changed anything. And so here, she's finally had enough, and she has him dragged out to the funeral pyre by her servants, these little Aboriginal, like pre-Atlanteans. And as they're about to set him on fire. And now, if Tarzan dies, this guy, Kagi, gets to be her husband. Because she has to have a husband, and she selected Tarzan. But if Tarzan is sacrificed, Kagi is the high priest, and he gets to be her husband. So he's got a vested interest in seeing Tarzan burned. And right as she's about to do it, this elephant... Now, Tarzan hears the elephant and responds. He gives the Tarzan cry, which would be hard to do with your hands tied behind your back, laying prone on a funeral pyre. But he does, and the elephant is mad. The elephant is crazed, maddened with lust, as Roy Thomas says in this episode. And so it comes and smashes into the camp. And just before it does, Tarzan convinces Law to cut him loose and that he'll rescue her, that he will get her out of there safely. So she cuts him loose. And true to his word, he scoops her up into his arms and runs up into this tree. Now the elephant messes with some of the locals until they scatter. Excuse me. The elephant messes with some of the locals until they scatter. Look at how violent this is. Kills one of them up against the tree with his tusk. Smashes another one to death with his giant hooves. But then once they're all gone, the elephant returns to Tarzan and Law, stranded up in this tree. Tantor, also the elephants are all called Tantor. That's how they're addressed in Mangani, which is the ape language of Africa. The elephant continues smashing up against the tree until it knocks it over, and Tarzan has to jump out with Law into another tree to keep her from being killed, to keep both of them from being killed. And now finally the elephant gets bored and goes off, and Tarzan demands that Law call her men and that he will solve her problem. She will not have to marry Kagi. And Tarzan lays down the law. In just a couple panels, John Buscema and Roy Thomas have Tarzan demand that Kagi submit to Tarzan's rule and that they go back and serve Law faithfully, or that they will have to deal with him. And then we get what's going on with Jane, who has escaped on her own. It wasn't Albert Wepper, who helped her escape from Achmet Zek's camp. she did it on her own. Jane found a knife and cut her way out of the tent and went out into the jungle alone. And so now, I believe she is out here alone, cornered by a panther. So Jane, I had to back up. Jane escaped from the tent on her own and is now out here in the jungle, cornered by a panther. He's leaving, but it's getting dark. So these are all the moving parts Roy Thomas has to deal with. And John Buscema is, keeping track of them as well. He's doing his part. He's doing the real writing. Roy Thomas is just putting in the words. It's almost like John Buscema is doing this in a foreign language and Roy Thomas has to come in and replace the dialogue. Like it's being done in Japanese or Afrikaans, and Roy Thomas has to come in and put it into English. The Marvel method is a really strange way of writing. So we get a few panels, 1 page's worth of panels of Jane. She's trapped. Then we get Albert Wepper. He's out here running from Ahmed Zek, and he runs into a band of Abyssinians. So now we have an entirely new power. A new player has entered the game, right? This is a new army. Now he knows who they are. He's aware of them, and they're aware of him. And he explains that his name is Monsieur Foucault. And he actually, one of the things that happens, I'm getting ahead of myself. Meanwhile, Albert Werper, who has a bag of gems that he's stolen from Tarzan, now sees one of Ahmed Zek's men out searching the jungle for him, and he gets attacked by a lion. The horse is spooked, comes running directly to him, and he jumps on the horse. A lot of moving parts right here. He rides this horse into the camp of a group of Abyssinians, these guys have come south chasing someone else, and I think Ahmed Zek, and they take him hostage along with Mugambe, who believes that Albert Werper does not recognize him, and Albert Werper doesn't recognize him, but also Mugabe knows him as Monsieur Foucault and does not believe him to be Tarzan's enemy. But here, now this is interesting, this next page, everyone sees him, so he's taking off his shirt, doing something, getting cleaned up or whatever, and he spills out his bag of gems, and Mugambe recognizes the pouch as belonging to Tarzan. Everyone sees this guy with his little bag of gems, his little bag of jewels, which out here, this one, they're just colored as pearls. They're not even colored as, sapphires and rubies and whatever else. Spider-Man hostess. So we have all these moving parts, and Tarzan stumbles upon Jane and Ahmed Zek. Jane gets recaptured but sees Tarzan. Tarzan has amnesia. Ahmed Zek's men open fire, and Tarzan goes down with a bunch of other whoever else. Tarzan runs into a group of apes and tells them to follow him, and they do, and these guys open fire on them, and they all go down. So we're left at the end of this issue. Tarzan is laying wounded from a gunshot. Jane thinks he's dead, doesn't know he has amnesia, and he may or may not wake up, with his memories recovered. I guess we'll find out in the next one. But in true John Buscema fashion, the last page is as many panels as he can fit and cram as much story into the last page as you can. And yeah, so Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, #6. No complaints. This is a picture-perfect comic book. Other than the fact that bullets don't seem to hurt people in the jungle. Apparently, maybe these are all musket shots and it's very weak rounds and you can pluck them out with a knife, but still it's gunfire, It'd be better if you knew that there was something slowing the bullets down. Taking a bullet point blank like Mugabe did and got up and walked away like Tarzan's about to do, that stretches the limits of credibility, but it's a fucking comic book. What do you want, dude? Tarzan learned to speak. Tarzan learned to read in a cabin on his own. This is my argument about Tarzan, is that Tarzan is basically all of human history compressed into a single generation. White men created English, built massive cities, basically did everything, and you could put one in the jungle and he'd still become king of the jungle even without education. So Legacy of a Mad Scientist, Legend of Ashley Fox, 2 amazing audiobooks for you guys here on the channel on YouTube to listen to, along with a comic book, Ashley Fox Last Valkyrie, in the description. Today there is something I want to talk about. It has nothing to do with, would you take revenge on someone who didn't barter for food with your family? I don't think I would have let my family starve. I would have taken my revenge before they starved to death. I would have found a way, if that was the only food in the area, I would have found a way to make my services undeniable and incredibly valuable, even if it was at gunpoint, I suppose. But I wouldn't have let my family starve to death first. So that's my answer for that one. Yesterday's, I think I would walk off alone, especially if it was at night. I don't think I would join a group at night. A group of panicked people out of state. I would be trying to find my way home. What am I mad about today? I was watching Q&A with Chuck Dixon. I think he does this every week. I want to say it's number 17, but it might be number 217 for all I know. It's the first one I've watched. I think it really is 217 or 270. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. It's one of the most recent ones, and he quoted a tweet from an author named Joyce Carol Oates, who I've never read anything from, but apparently she's a literary titan. And they were talking about how her literary agent is heartbroken because he cannot place first-time young white male writers with an editor anywhere, even if the book is critical of white privilege. So let me rephrase that. It's literary titan because they can say obfuscate. That sentence is the definition of obfuscation. All the Jew editors in America, there are no Jew editors that will take a book from a white male, even if it's an anti-white book. Even if you're writing anti-white propaganda, they won't accept it. So that's what's going on. This is the Kalergi plan in action. This is what everyone is too afraid to talk about. I'm a writer. I've been watching this happen my whole life. Stephen King, John Grisham, that's the last generation of white writers. Cormac McCarthy. There are no young white writers. What happened? So what, we're supposed to believe PlayStation came out and we all became illiterate? No, it's not what happened. The Jews took the mask off. The Jews took the mask off. The Jews are trying to run the world. So now you have publishing houses like Antelope Hill, which I have not submitted to. They have a yearly competition, Thoughts About Rome. I think they're doing it again right now. And there's something about being an echo chamber and silo, like getting on Telegram or going to Goyim TV and trying to do regular fiction. Do you know what I mean? You can't. The Jews are going to pay. And this Joyce Carol Oates, I'm sure if I was to dive very deep into her work, you'd find that she has her position because white men were being pushed out back when she was getting into the industry. We're coming for you, Jews.